so much, Pauline. Okay, so Pauline, thank you so much for everything, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be so exciting and useful for the audience, especially graduate students. And then, so now let's move on to the interview part. So this is also something that I have been really looking forward to. So Pauline, I'm going to start off with some questions targeting the future graduate students, because the purpose of this channel is to introduce the field of second language acquisition to many students who are thinking of their future career, and hopefully they'll come to us, the field of second language acquisition. So as I introduced, your work has been extensively recognized, and so I'm now wondering what made you decide to become a researcher in the very first place? And why did you decide to study linguistics? And in the end, you decided to move on to PhD? Because there must have been so many other choices.
No, well, this is very strange. It's still true that linguistics is not taught at secondary schools. There's no A-level in linguistics. Mm-hmm. I did my A-levels in English literature, a bit of something called English language, which is not linguistics, not really. It's more like reading comprehension, it seems to me. So I did a university degree in English literature, and it was not particularly enjoyable or illuminating for me, but I got there. And when I had graduated, I decided I just thought it would be wonderful. We just joined the EU, so I could go and work in France, which is what I did. And it was while I was in France, I got very interested in language learning, my language learning, and why it wasn't going as well as I'd hoped. And actually decided it was because I didn't speak to enough French people, and I was right. I was right. Anyway, a few years after that, I started teaching English as a foreign language in the United States, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing that, and I did it in Japan, as you've mentioned, and I really enjoyed that as well. Although I have to say I was largely ignorant of language acquisition. I was making it up as I was going along. And I did a master's degree in linguistics when I came to the UK, simply because I couldn't get a job as an English language teacher without it. And that's when it started. When I realized there was this field called applied linguistics, it was 14 or 15 years too late for me to do an undergraduate degree in it, but I should have. Why did I do a PhD? Mm-hmm. Why did I decide to become a researcher? I'm sure Peter won't mind me saying this, Peter Skian was advertising for a research assistant, and I needed a job. And I had just finished my master's, and I had done an empirical study for my dissertation. So I was sort of freshly excited by and experienced in classroom-based research. That was what was really important, that my data was gathered in classrooms. And Peter was looking to do the same thing. He wanted a classroom-based research studies, which is how I got the job. And I only did a PhD because it was expected of me as his research assistant. I wouldn't have dreamt of doing it otherwise.
So basically, because of this job offer and position, you decided to further pursue. What? Yeah. So, so did you actually? This would be a little bit like a funny question, but did you actually enjoy doing a PhD?
Yeah, I did. It's daunting. If anyone is thinking of doing a PhD, or anyone doing a PhD out there, it's probably a good idea not to have children at the same time. It might be too late for you. you might already have to, but it is a very all-consuming.
What was it like actually when you were doing
very
PhD?
Hard. It's like, I've often thought of it. It took me 6 years to finish, and it's because I was working. I had a job, and I had children.
Wow.
And I thought it was like having a piece of difficult homework that took 6 years to finish. And I think although I really liked my master's degree and I was extremely proud of my dissertation, that only took me 6 months, not 6 years. And by the time I finished my PhD, and I think this is very common experience of people doing a PhD, is you never want to look at it again. You never. It's exhausting. It's a very important thing to have done, and it's very hard. And I don't think anybody should do a PhD and was not expecting it to be hard. So if you can do it before you have children, you'll have less distractions. That's all I can say. That's me. I'm not. I don't believe it's possible to multitask. It's not. I think that's absolute fiction. That what you have to do is constantly interrupt yourself.
Oh, okay.
So you can only do tasks in a serial fashion.
Right.
But because you've got to do 3 tasks, you can't do them all. You have to do them one at a time and only a short burst, which is sequence. Not great. Yeah, it's just in a sequence. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Although you did it,
I did it,
resulting in like a bunch of publications.
I did it. I did it, and I'm glad. I couldn't possibly have had a career without it. So it was largely thanks to Peter, basically saying that it was
also having a very good supervisor and an encouraging supervisor.
Yes, it was my job to, will you do a PhD? And I think my answer to that was yes, but I hope I'm not going to have to pay the fees or something. But it was his idea, and he was an extremely good supervisor. So I think that's probably key.
Right.
It's key to finishing.
Right.
Having the right supervisor.
Thank you, Pauline. That's a very good way to correspond to that question. So probably related to this, we have seen so many graduate students always trying to look for a very good topic for the dissertation, MA level as well as PhD level. I'm just wondering if you can give students some advice on what is important to find a good research topic.
It's the sine qua non of your life as a PhD student. You're going to live with it for possibly 6 years. You've got to like it.
Okay, you've got to like it.
You've got to like it. And that's going to depend on you, isn't it? In all of your reading, going to presentations. Also, especially if you read a paper and you get to the end of it and you've enjoyed it hugely, the author will say what the next steps are. And that can be very inspiring. The author said, recommendations for future research. They're basically giving you a tip there. And that you might think, I've enjoyed that paper so much. It's so interesting. And this author has said, this is what we need to find out now. I think if you start off with being interested in a particular area of linguistics, and it's relevant to you and your experience, then do that.
Wow, that's actually really good advice. I see. So finding a favorite paper first, then looking at the end of the paper. That's really true. Authors usually.
There's also there's something which is in language teaching research, isn't it? That journal. Because I've just put something in there which is a research agenda for the next 10 years.
You mean like a language teaching?
Language teaching, that's it, language teaching. And I think that journal has got this idea that it's inviting people to say, well, if you could have, 10 years at the end of which you wanted to see the following things having been researched and found out, decided. That's a great idea. And so they've got a series of those coming out, and you can direct students towards that and say, look, this is actually someone saying, this is what needs doing, and this is how you could do it, and this is how you would go about it. So I'm not saying go away with that article of mine, right, but I'm saying that other researchers telling you there are these paths to follow, and they sort of say, well, I can't follow them, I can't follow all of them, but I would like these things to be followed. This is how you might do it, is a very good starting place. Yeah,
Pauline, that's a really good one. And I also, so first of all, I'll definitely put the link for your paper published in Language Teaching. And I think
well, I wasn't looking for
I won't, definitely I want my audience to look at the paper, but that's a really good one, because either way, it's true that academic papers end with some suggestions for future research, and it's really true. There are so many topics, but you end up with finding some good favorite paper, and maybe that's a good way to find a future
directions. Can I also say that what you get at the end of papers, research papers, is often pedagogical implications. And those things you can largely ignore. They are premature, and often they're just sort of casting about for something to say pedagogically. But the shortcomings, the limitations of a piece of research, which the authors always put in the end, are very valuable. They're really valuable. Rather
than looking at pedagogical implications,
don't look at that.
Carefree.
Look at.
I totally understand your stance.
Look at the limitations, and then look at what they say. Well, we could have done it better if we'd done it this way. And think,
what a good tip. Advice, actually.
And then what are they saying about future? What are they saying about future research? Because they're basically giving you a hint.
Right. I see. To make the society happy, we always need to talk about pedagogical implications, but that's not really important.
But you see, it's not it's premature.
But I totally, in line with you. I think your advice is just fantastic. That's exactly how graduate students can do that. Yeah. Sorry, but just out of my curiosity, though, you said you finished your MA within 6 months. Then I'm now very wondering, because
the dissertation.
MA dissertation, and I know that your MA dissertation was published in Applied Linguistics. And obviously that's one of the highly cited papers in the field of ASL. I'm just curious then. Back then, how did you find a topic? Because obviously within such a short, limited amount of time, it must have been very difficult for you to figure out. And at that time, were you already with Peter Skin?
No, I wasn't.
So then
I was. This is how it went. Actually, I am following my own advice. Then I was reading research papers about task-based learning. And I was at the time also working as a classroom teacher, and I was constantly struck by, the conclusion that that will never work in my classes. My students will just not do that.
I see.
And I thought, well, then I'm going to find out. So I thought that what I would do was replicate to some degree some of these research papers that talked about, I've gone on about this for donkey's years, about the negotiation of meaning. And how central it is to language acquisition. And I thought, well, they are all collected. That data is not collected in classrooms. And I did think that in a classroom, people would behave in that way. They got me into lots of arguments with people, but that was open-minded. If I do that in my classrooms, will I expect to have those outcomes? And in fact, I didn't have those outcomes at all.
You didn't?
No. So that was quite gratifying. That I found that learner behavior in classrooms was, I thought, not the same as learner behavior. Well, not even learner behavior, it was volunteer behavior in a lab setting. I think that was it was interesting to me. It was I was able to do it because I had classes. That's the other thing. It was, okay, I have a class, I'll try this out in my class. So it was easy to do, and that is very important as well.
Right.
So I had a personal interest in it and the ability to carry out a very limited unfunded kind of research, and it took me a very long time, but I did turn it into a publication in the end.
That's right. Yeah. It's one of the very famous papers on negotiation for meaning in the field. So, and it's just quite interesting and also very inspiring to hear that instead of listening to the pedagogical implications, casting doubt on your pedagogical implications led you to come up with that, interesting, unique.
Yeah, well, I do think that any practicing teacher, and I haven't practiced as a teacher since 1990 or something. But you can't help it when you read something which is purporting to be useful to you as a teacher, to think, well, how would I do? And would my students tolerate it? That was another thing, actually, that the sorts of classroom tasks which were used in those research studies were sorts of things that I thought my students will just laugh at me if I say, I want you to do this in the classroom. Because they're childish. Because they were childish. They were childish. I mean, why would you ask sort of grown men to find the difference between two pictures? And that's why, when I've done research, when I started doing research with Peter, I was very keen to have tasks that I could sell to students as worthwhile. You've paid like however much an hour, to have this class. Right. I'm not asking you to build a Lego model or draw a map, or decide where to plant vegetables in the garden. I'm not going to do that. We're going to have tasks which are engaging for them in and of themselves, that you would think, well, I went to class today, had my English class today, and we had a really good discussion about crimes of passion.
Right.
That's how I had a huge argument with somebody about whether you should execute women who kill their husbands or not, or let them go free. Now, I thought that was, a better way to spend your time as a language learner. Right, I see. So, okay. And I still think if you're going to have pedagogic implications from your study, you've got to think about whether that would actually be sellable. Paying customers. Could you really do that in a classroom? Lots and lots and lots of the tasks are designed because they need them in this particular way in order to research a particular question. So you start off with a question and you design a task to explore it. In fact, I don't think you should do that. I think you should always be thinking, can I get away with that in my classroom or not? Or are they going to rebel? Because they will not, if it's boring and stupid, they'll look out the window and they'll ruin your data. It's quite interesting that you are critical, and you are being critical about pedagogical implications coming from negotiation for meaning research, but then you tested, them in your classroom. So basically, if you find something coming out of research to be a little bit unrealistic, it could be a good topic, right? Because you can get it back to your classroom, but you can basically show that it's not going to work, and probably you can come up with better version. As you said, the tasks can be more realistic. And
as you said, I really like the way you said basically that the things that you're doing can be sellable to students and real classroom practitioners. I really like that. Thank you, Pauline. Okay, I have 2 more questions to go.
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah.
Then I'll have to let the cat out.
I wanted to keep seeing the cat, but all right, the time will come. So
he needs to go out, I think. Yeah.
He's hungry by now. So okay. So yeah, this must be quite relevant to like everyone watching this YouTube channel. So what are the tips for publication in international journals? Obviously, you've published a lot, but at the very same time, you're still trying to publish, like the project you presented today. But just based on your extensive experience, I'm just wondering if you can give us some insights or.
I wish I knew, actually, because
this is good
everything
advice.
Everything I've published, it felt like it's a bit of a struggle. And but anyway, I mean, there is initial planning you must do, I think, which is to determine the journal that you want to put your paper into. Requires you finding out about the journal and notes to contributors and what is relevant and not relevant. Excuse me. I opened the window, but it's now freezing cold, so shut it again. Cat hasn't gone out.
That's nice.
So yes, so I'm a reviewer for a lot of journals, and I think one of the most maybe if I can take your question from a reviewer's point of view,
right.
What is often the case is that the person has given a paper which is not really suitable for the journal. So you have to find out the journals that are looking for whatever it is that you're doing, and don't try to give your paper to. So you must never sort of do the sort of scattergun approach. I'll just give it to everybody and see who accepts. And you've also got to look at how they want it presented. You know what the word limit is, and how they want their tables done, and this, that, and the other. So you have to pay attention to these things, because if you don't, you're much more likely to get very quickly rejected. So choose the journal. Make sure you do what the editors want. Get it proofread, so that it looks good. That it looks good. It's got to look good. And also journal reviewers are being asked to questions like, do you think this will be of interest to the reader? Do you think this is something new? So if you've got something which is of interest to their readership and it is new, you are 3/4 of the way there. And I think the reviewers' comments that you will get back, and you will get back reviewers' comments. They won't just say, "Oh, fine, just publish it," because if they do, it's probably not a very good journal, I would think. Those comments should be, they're not always, so steel yourself, but they should be constructive, and they should make you think, oh, that's so kind, because they've seen the weakness and they've told me how to repair it. And then not all reviewers are like that, and some reviewers can't help themselves. It's like people, when you're driving a car and you think that you can afford to be really rude to other drivers because they'll never see you again. So your normal politeness vanishes. It's a bit like they're anonymous, and they can exploit that anonymity to be rude, and they shouldn't. But I think most reviewers are constructive, and then if you're getting a reply saying major revisions or minor revisions, it means that they think there are legs on this paper and it deserves to be published. And you may then have to go into a very long process where you keep revising, but eventually, keep strong. It will be in a version which they'll publish.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Pauline.
Yeah, the other thing to say is that there is an absolute explosion of journals now because of the online journals that there are. So whereas years ago it was there were very few for me to find to put things in, and of course they only had 4 issues a year and they only had 4 papers in each issue. It was like ridiculous. There were thousands of people chasing maybe 16 slots, in a journal. That's not true now. And so it's much more, there's much more possibility for you to get published.
I see. That's a very encouraging message. So do you think that the industry has changed a lot over the past
I do. I think it's
10 to 20 years?
It's completely changed. And for the better, I think. Yeah, I think for the better. But then, of course, we've also got this change of, especially in the UK, where publishing becomes a requirement, not just something that you might do in your spare time if you felt like it, which is certainly the case when I was first an academic. When I first started working at St Mary's, I was the only person publishing in the very large swathe of my colleagues. And they were just very good teachers, they were very good scholars, but they didn't really see that they wanted to get involved in the research side. That's gone now. So you have to have a PhD and you have to have research publications before you get your job. And then you'll be probably audited every year to see how much have you added to the publication. That's not a good thing, really. But it's inevitable.
Inevitable now.
It's inevitable now.
Right.
It's inevitable now. So you've got to like writing, haven't you? You want to be an academic, you've got to actually enjoy that.
That's right. So I'm asking a very stupid question, but do you
question?
No. Yeah. Sorry, this is a sidetrack question, but do you like writing a paper?
No, I hate it. Absolutely hate it.
That's a surprise. People would definitely imagine that you must be.
It's
loving.
Nothing is worse. Nothing is worse. It's so hard.
I see. It's a really difficult task.
The payoff is when you're done and you've got something really, really well polished. I mean, I find writing very hard. I find that I can spend hours and hours and hours, and I do spend hours and hours and hours writing stuff which I will then delete because it's not right.
Right.
And then I might write the same sentence 25 times before I've got it right. And I've also got a very unfortunate habit I can't break of not being able to write the next paragraph until I'm satisfied with the present paragraph. I can't just skip ahead. I can't. It's like learning a piece of music. Right. You can't go and learn to play on a piano, for example. I could start practicing in the middle of a piece. I always had to start practicing at the beginning and play the whole way through until I reached the bit which I wasn't very good at, and then work on that. So it's like that with my writing. So writing is extremely hard, but I think that when I finished, I'm able to give the impression that it was easy, and that's worth trying for. Give your readers an easy job. Think about your reader, this poor reader who's going to have to slog through this 7,000 words. Make it as engaging as you can, but scholarly, and try to be both. Try to be both. There's there is no excuse for turgid, boring, desperate sort of writing, which a lot of academic writing, is. It's just unreadable. It's unreadable. And why should you read it if it's unreadable? Why should anybody want to read it?
Right.
So you have to try to develop a really good style. I mean, a person who writes really well is Rod Ellis, writes really well. Nick Ellis writes really well. Skian writes really well. I'm not going to say who doesn't write. I'm just picking up write really well.
I see, finding a good role models.
But you find, yes, and how do they do it? How do they keep the reader's attention? And that's what I've always tried to do.
Okay, it's quite a surprising, probably to many of the audience that even somebody like you, very well established researcher, writer, has had a difficulty, and also
and it doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any better.
Oh, wow, interesting. And also, we easily imagine that the professors have no. He wants to be fed, I think.
He does, actually.
He does. Okay.
He's not my cat. I have to put him out.
That's right. He's a neighbor's cat.
He's a neighbor's cat.
That's true. Yeah, but it's quite interesting to know somebody even like you has has been reflecting on your writing practice, and there are certain things that you want to even fix now, but he's calling for it. But anyway, so yeah, thank you, Pauline.
It's like being photobombed, isn't it? I'm going to stick him out the window.
He can go out and he can get dinner soon.
I haven't just chucked him out from the first floor window to fall to his death. I would say there is a roof underneath it.
Okay. That's sweet. Pauline. Okay, Pauline. So
more about my life now. I was probably willing to share, but there you go.
He's gone for food. I see. Okay, Pauline. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And my very final question, probably this is kind of like related to what we just have been talking about, is the and also this is my favorite question. Which papers of yours do you remember the most, and why? Any stories behind the scene? Because I'm a huge fan of your work, and obviously I've read many papers, but I'm very curious as an author, as a person who read all these projects. I'm curious, which one would you pick? The most unforgettable experience, negative or positive? I really don't know.
I don't know. The one that gave me the most pleasure was probably the first one, the negotiation of meaning one.
Wow. Okay.
Because it was my master's dissertation. I'd never written for publication before. It was turned down by Studies in Second Language Acquisition within about a week.
Wow, really?
It did. It was awful. It was really, really bad. And that was because the gatekeepers are graduate students who, they just pick ones that they will send for review. And I didn't have any complicated statistics. I think that was And I remember writing back saying, well, that's not, I'm not doing an experiment. That's why, can't you understand? It's not an experiment. Idiot. But I had then I tried it in applied linguistics, and the editors, and that was Martin Pygate back in those days, incredibly helpful, and it eventually it came out, and there must be some kind of special pleasure you get in the first one. The first time you see in a journal something written by you is special.
So I'm very curious. So how you decided to move on to the publication, like submission to a journal, especially when you are an MA student, right?
Well, I have to say that between submitting my dissertation and getting it marked and publishing it was about 11 years.
Oh.
And in the meantime, I had another baby, which, and I wasn't going to have an academic career. I was an English language teacher, and it was in becoming Peter's research assistant and starting to rethink my life. I sort of thought, well, I'll give this a go. But I had to turn a 18,000 word dissertation into a 7,000 word paper, and it just took a very, very long time. Right. And then I had to rewrite it about 5 times as usual. So it was when did it come out? 1996. 1998. Is that right? 1998.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't remember. Yeah. Well, actually, that means it was 11 years.
Oh, wow. And how did the review process go? Like, did it go very smoothly or?
Yeah, once I was in applied linguistics, I had brilliant, helpful reviews and a very helpful editor.
Wow.
And who was saying, we really want to publish the paper, but it's going to have to change in this way, this way, and this way. So
Right.
it was very, very encouraging.
Wow.
And I was, I mean, I was delighted, more delighted with that than anything else, probably, I think. I can't think of it. All the others, I'm very proud of them. They're all my children, you know. I sweated over them. But there must be something, perhaps you remember that as well, as you know, the first time you see your name in a journal, a big moment.
That's true.
Because it shows you can do it. It shows you that you don't have to be a Nobel Prize winner. You know, you can do it.
That's true. After so much amount of work and ambition, probably, you can make it.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Pauline. I think you have answered all the questions I prepared. So thank you so much, Pauline. Yeah. Okay. I think that's it for today. Yeah. Thank you, Pauline.
And thank you. Thank you, Kazuya. Very good interviewer.
Thank you. And what a great, occasion where we can share the research as well as experience, and hopefully, the audience, some of you must be thinking of graduate school in the future, and hopefully they'll find this SLA and doing research to be a possibility, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Join the club.
Thank you, Pauline. And they may, see us in London in the future.
Well, as soon as we're allowed out of our bubbles, and as soon as we can sort of rejoin the normal life, yes.
That's true. That's what we'll do. Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah. Thank you, Pauline. So thank you so much. And give her a big applause. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, everybody.
This time, I'm very excited to introduce you Professor Andrea Rivesh.
I'll be talking about my current research, exploring cognitive writing processes and behaviors through mixed methods.
What made you decide to become a researcher?
But then, especially in the third year, I started to feel that I loved secondary school teaching and I really liked my students, but I missed studying.
Did you actually know that the field of second language acquisition and second language education exists